Hey everyone, thanks for joining me tonight. I'm Val Evans and I've got Todd with me. How are you doing, Todd?
I'm
You
alive.
know that Todd is not working on this case. Neither am I with any law enforcement, and our opinions are simply that, opinions. If you want to get in touch with Todd, the best way to do it is go to his Facebook page, and you'll be able to get in touch with him very quickly there.
Yeah. I've had a lot of letters and, no disrespect to people, but they're sending me clues or information, that kind of thing. And if they have suspicious activity, and some of these people that have written to me live right there, I mean, where this happened. So, they need to, if there's something suspicious, they need to contact law enforcement and not tell me. So I just wanted to let them know I'm not really working on this, but I'm trying to, and you are trying as well, to give some insight for somebody to listen to, whether it be law enforcement or somebody closely connected to the case. But the information to send is not really to us.
I wanted to first off say that I don't want to talk about the performance of Ellie tonight. I don't want to talk about POIs and names. You want to hear a little story? I'm going to tell a story while everybody gets here.
I'll try not to fall asleep.
I had a friend who, well, she wasn't really a friend, but an acquaintance that I knew, and she moved down to Gainesville, and she was moving into her new place in Gainesville in 1990, August 1990. It was right down the street from the murders. This girl was like, she had such a great future ahead of her. She was one of these people who was an overachiever, looked like a model. So after the murders, she comes back. She was, from what I understand, broken. It was very hard to get back to her normal way of life again. And she wasn't attacked, but she was in proximity. And I think it's important to think about that. It's not just we're looking at this from a distance, and we see students just fleeing in fear, and we feel bad. But this is a terrible tragedy, and it's affected so many people, not just the friends and family, but the students. And they're terrified, and it's very tragic for all of them. So, and especially if we're throwing out names, we don't want to do that. So hopefully you guys, we will not do that tonight. And so what do you want to start with? Could I just show you some photos and you give me some thoughts, because we had some clues.
Sure, throw some photos out there. I would also like um, your take on. Yeah, I'm being silly. I'd like I'd like your take on astrologically about the suspects or the suspect, and I'll give you my take. I had one woman who wrote to me who actually lives there. Whose children are on the campus. I won't mention names. And right now they're living in fear. I feel that they don't have much to go on. So I think what people are urging me to do is to try to at least get uh, some suspect information or what I feel, and you know, and go from there.
I put together a slideshow. I wanted to touch on some questions I had. You were talking about the couch, and you said it was significant. Is this the couch that you were talking about, the one outside? And the whole time when we were talking live, I was thinking, just, I don't know, thinking it was inside.
Originally, I felt it had significance with the inside,
Mhm.
but see, the positioning of it is also against this hill. I do feel that they went from that hill to the next street to where the car was. Now, originally, I thought it was right up in the driveway. They could have been worried about cameras because people put cameras on their houses nowadays.
Mhm.
And maybe that's why they were right up on that street, and that's a walk down the hill. Um, I know one of them was wearing work boots, so they were equipped to walk through that.
When you were saying the couch, you hadn't seen any photos,
No.
anything at that point.
Mhm.
You had said the couch is crucial, and I had wondered if maybe they had used that maybe to hide behind, or if, maybe
Possible.
there's, they were just crouched behind there or something.
From the other view of the house and the roads there, I think the street is parallel, to that hill on
Mm,
the other side, so,
okay.
um
When I see the chairs there towards the sliding glass door, and you wonder if that was before or after or what happened there. And then there's trash there. Trash is a big theme in this chart. The first element of it I saw was when there was that logistical problem with the trash being taken out.
I really do feel that they were followed from that location.
People were saying how she's underage, she's not gonna be at a bar. So I think it would be better if I focused mainly on the fact that you said a parking lot, that she may have seen someone in a parking lot. We're not sure where she went after that.
The lapse in time had to be due to something they were doing in town. I really don't see anybody at that home till quite late.
We're gonna look at Friendship Square Park. There is a gymnasium. I'm not gonna say where it is. It's next to a church, and it's off of 5th Street, around the area, but
Mhm.
Friendship Square Park, and then there was a recycling plant around there too. Aquarius comes up in this chart, which is friendship. It's in the 5th house, which is park. At first, I was thinking you just said the clock, but you had described the clock perfectly, and I put in my last video that it was um, it's like a wrought iron clock in the middle of town,
That's what I
and
thought.
right across the street was the garden lounge, and the garden lounge, well, you had mentioned a lounge, so I thought, "Well, this might be something to go on," and then I look at the garden lounge, and my imagination, of course, starts going because it says temporarily closed. So, I guess a few businesses are gonna be closed around there right now. Of course, it's Thanksgiving week, so
Mhm.
you never know. But that might be, I think, a good clue there.
I don't think they left. I think they're still there in the area.
A lot of astrologers are looking at Libra because it represents a couple. The Gainesville murder charts show that the victims were in Libra too, and they were also, beautiful co-eds. It's a couple that, obviously, it's a couple that is a victim or are victims. There's a lot of comparisons with the Gainesville chart. He not only did horrendous things to these co-eds, but he was also a burglar, and he took money, and he tried to check all the boxes in that one.
Is there anything that talks about marijuana on the chart?
There's a ton of drugs, and
I
that's
mean, not just the perpetrators, but the victims. I thought I smelled, marijuana smoke.
okay. Xana's father said in an interview that he was told by the police that only one of the victims was the target.
I
It's
believe
interesting.
that was one, actually.
Yeah. Mary Ellen says this was not a drug hit, too personal.
No, not a drug hit, but I felt like I'm getting the environment there, among the students, and I'm smelling pot, so I didn't
Okay.
know if they personally knew if they would do that there.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe somebody was out by that couch having some, these things could tie in.
So I think this is the time when everybody thinks that the attacks happened. Neptune is directly on the 6th house cusp. So that is extremely, extremely strong. And that can often show someone who's in disguise, like you said, might have a mask on.
Mhm.
Uh, but we're still looking at Mars there in the ninth house. Now, in the Gainesville charts, Mars trining Mercury, which means two. He had two weapons, he had a knife and a gun. Astrologers, tell me what you think about Mars trining Saturn. That could mean an old weapon. And I think I actually might have mentioned that earlier. This could have been like a World War II type style of weapon, which I think they said. So that could be an example of Saturn trining Mars. Everybody's going to get mad at me for saying something financial, but it's almost like somebody is very upset that someone has money.
I saw a house. So I saw a house where one of the perpetrators lives at, and the details that I got from this house, I also saw a house with a curb, which means something city, curb, sewer underneath, that kind of thing. I got a number 2 in the address number. I also saw power lines, pretty large ones, I believe, behind the house view. Right now, everybody's decorating for Christmas. I do not see decorations there. I am also, I get a letter. Okay, there's a couple things. I got a letter A, possibly with a street, and I also heard what sound like a man's name for a street, possibly. The other thing I was getting is down this street, I am seeing a McDonald's or some kind of fast food place. I would say maybe a couple blocks from where this home is. So there was something else, and I got the word metal. And I either feel that this person was either does some metal work or metal shop, or possibly listens to a lot of heavy metal. The other thing too is I keep seeing work boots by the door, a lot of work boots, and I was getting somebody who either drives a forklift or an excavator or some kind of machinery. So I feel like there's some aspect to this person working outdoors. Now, of course, I talked about two suspects, but whichever one comes to me is doesn't matter. It's important. Um, the the male that who lost his life in this, what was his name? Ethan was.
Ethan, yes, Ethan Chapin.
'Cause I am getting some stuff, from him, or what happens when people cross over in this fashion. Sometimes it is hard to reach them. I hate to say sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. First was the, young woman with the brown hair, but now I am getting him, and, um interesting. He said he fixes something mechanical. Okay. So could that be maybe a place where he got his car fixed? Or I mean, I'm putting it out there that these are definite clues that it could be important. The other thing was the motive was definitely of a sexual nature. Sexual nature is the killing act is the sexual nature sometimes. Okay. But think from what I've heard that that's something that the authorities know about already. The other part about it that I was getting was, he said something about his voice was really sounded kind of angry, okay? He said this guy is gonna stand out and they're gonna be kind of shocked. at what they find because he's a lunatic. Um, like kind of somebody that just escaped an insane asylum, he says. Um, and yeah, so that is one thing I get. But he was held by his neck, Ethan. I don't know if this is another person that was holding him by his neck, but he was held by his neck. There would definitely be indications around the neck. Second was something placed over the mouth. And um, he keeps telling me, and they keep saying like ritual. So I'm getting the feeling this was like a ritualized type of murder. So all of the stuff that we talked about with cults and groups and being part of some kind of cult come, and you and I have been working on another case, um, that has a very similar feel to it, and this has got that real cult feel. The perpetrators. I really don't think, I mean, I think that if they're looking for quiet people that are just sort of weird around the campus, I don't think it's gonna really, I think these people are pretty obvious that are standing out to me, and that clock square and the watching feels very relevant to me. Also, one of this house that I was seeing too, I believe there is a dog that lives there of a more aggressive type, like pit bull. Okay, that was one thing. Coloring light, whitish color. I'm also something about the belts that this guy wears, like he's got stuff on his belt, or he possibly has a chain that hangs from his pants. You know, some people have a chain for keys and stuff like that, and that's what I'm getting. And I wouldn't be surprised if the dog has more of elaborate style chain type collar or spike collar or something. Um, and Anyway, so I'll leave it there.
That was amazing.
Contractor, um, I don't think a private contractor. I'm feeling more for a company
Okay.
that he works at, or a factory, or I talked about the recycling center. I'm not gonna target these places, but just, I felt like he's in a more industrial type complex, you know?
Yeah. I think, well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for not putting people's names or at least
Yeah,
make,
don't put names out there. We're not even, this is just a suggestion.
yeah, thank you for at least making the attempt not to put names in the chat. We really don't want people to be targets. I'm going to go through a couple of questions here. Okay, this is interesting. DG says this cult stuff with their sacrifices has got to stop. Some people don't believe this happens. I'm glad you two are bringing awareness to this.
From the crime reports and from what I've heard, this cult stuff is becoming very, very big again.
So Christina Jew is saying, I get that he's within
Within,
walking distance.
let's put it this way, if a person is within walking distance, do they also follow them around town? Is there an obsession going on here? So that's possible too.
Todd, it's amazing when I read the chart, you get things sometimes. So I think it does help.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the other thing too is we had talked a little bit in the last video about whether the perps laid in wait or not. And I'm not sure what it is or not. I feel like I heard you say no, but then we were talking about the closet.
Yeah.
Is there a way that both can be true?
Sure. The Something was heard or coming in There was it was a fear attack. This was not done quickly, um, and so was there hiding? Possibly. They weren't quiet, I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah. Scott, definitely the fentanyl explosion. We're in a big Neptune period right now. The Sigma Chi house and the house where the murders occurred were within walking distance. Okay. It seems like everything was in walking distance. It just seems like a cute, small little town.
Mhm.
And they had, the girls had parties. And it seems like they had a lot of parties and they were having a lot of fun, as one should in college. And so there's this back and forth about whether these people came into the house or not. When I was looking at the plans for the house, I saw that Xana's room was in the back. And this was a house that just women lived in. Ethan was just there as a guest. So with Xana in the back, I think you would have had to go look for her bedroom. She was way in the back, and you had to go through the washroom, I think, to get there.
Mhm.
So the other possibility is that they went up the stairs and then they went downstairs. Now, Lindsay, you said, Val, can you give a possible astrological sign of the murderer? I think we talked in the other, it was Todd that gave it to me. He said that he thought he was an Aries, which would make someone more military minded. I definitely think he would be Aries. Just someone, probably someone with a moon in Aries, someone who's just, but I think a lot of Scorpio too.
I just get a, no, I won't target, the Aries sign here, because I have some Aries friends, so let's not go on that one, but,
Uh,
um, lack of empathy here with this person, no empathy, that's what I'm getting. So I don't know if there's one sign or another that would show that, or a combination, because obviously you cannot target just, I suppose, a sun sign. You have to have a combination in their chart that would signify lack of empathy.
Ted Bundy said he felt like a vampire, and he referred to his violent alter ego as the Hunchback. There's a lot of Gemini in killers' profiles.
Hmm.
Yorkshire Ripper said he was possessed with another personality. Danny Rolling possessed an alter ego called Gemini. And in the Gainesville murders, detectives who saw the bookcase that Danny moved in Krista Hoyt's apartment were convinced that two men were involved since it was too heavy to carry. That was a horrible, horrible scene. In this case, I don't think so much Gemini because it usually means a smaller person. And I think we were talking about the fact that this guy was pretty big. He's probably
Hefty, hefty. I feel just the force of the hands tells me this is somebody who lifts stuff, you know,
Mhm.
who's very heavy-handed.
A couple of questions that I got. What time did the clock say? Somebody had asked me. And I thought that was interesting. When you saw that clock, was there anything that,
I'm getting 11:30.
whoa, we don't know where Xana and Ethan were. I mean, it's November 27th. So yeah. So if they were around there down at that point, that's very interesting. And then you said he had a parking pass. Um,
But that not to the town, but to something else.
okay. Okay. So,
Maybe, maybe a commercialยard somewhere, you know? I get, definitely a shift worker on a shift.
mhm, okay.
The shift would be most likely, I'm getting very early in the morning, almost like this person would be up at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
So not a sleep in person. And the timing, of this attack is in their waking time.
So they're on that cycle.
By the way, their clothes were thrown away. The perpetrator's clothing, for some reason, I'm feeling stuff thrown into bags.
Yeah, they would have to.
I would imagine.
Well, we focused a lot on Scorpio in the second house, which can mean credit cards and second house things like possessions. And possessions, if you trine Neptune and Jupiter, that can show, things go missing. And I thought it'd be interesting to look at the moon, which is an elevated planet. Things in a crime chart that are above the horizon or above the ascendant and descendant axis. It can show what has a lot of strength. And moon here, the moon, at 17 degrees, and you have Black Moon Lilith right there. Black Moon Lilith is often a significator of one of the perps. So now in the 10th house, it can show the government. It can show out in the open. So I'm not sure, there could be a dog. And I do recall that somebody said that there was a dog barking. I don't think it was out in the open, but they heard somebody around 252. So that would make sense because the moon is dog. Also the ruler of the 6th, Pisces, would be the dog. But I think that with moon conjunct Black Moon Lilith is like an obsession. Or a Pluto type of energy, like obsessing over a home. It can be of a sexual nature. It can show sexy women in the 10th house. It can show sexy women or sexy woman is out and about and she's drinking.
What retrogrades were going on at the time?
Yeah, Jupiter in retro is something of note because you see a lot of cases, unfortunately, with Jupiter in retro as cases that are difficult to close. Jupiter is the ruler of finding things, like finding evidence, finding people. It's just very difficult to find evidence. Mars in retrograde, I've said before, this is a guy who is not working at full potential. And with that square to Neptune, that's because he's a drug addict, or he did drugs, or he's drinking too much. And somebody had said something about your clue regarding the green bottle, which she said, was that Jaeger? And I'm like, I don't know. But so you had seen that a green bottle was
I'm not a drinker, but
was kind of, I don't know if it was smashed, but it was left behind. It's hard to imagine someone who does something targeted that is of the mind that he wants to do something and carry it out, but he's not at full capacity. It's hard to figure out how that's possible.
this is kind of a dumb clue, but on the back hitch of this truck, and you don't see it too often except around here, you might see it with somebody who works a farm or something, but I saw a hook on the back of the hitch, like a hook.
Mm-hmm.
Those are used for sometimes pulling stuff. Sure, somebody could do a decorative thing with it, but I thought I saw it on the back of the truck. And
so another confirmation that it's probably a truck.
I still feel it is, and I understand the thinking of people thinking that this is somebody close by, somebody who watches. You know, you and I, especially on the Sean case that we're working on, are dealing with somebody very close by that's watching. So I won't rule that out, but if there happens to be a truck of that description, that's a good clue. Unless there's somebody else that was brought into this from outside, maybe a friend, something like that. So that's a possibility too.
Okay, Gloria says most campuses have car permits, but you're thinking probably not. Probably maybe a laborer that can get into places where he needs to work easily.
Is there a guards gate or anything like that on campus?
You imagine there would be. Let's see
Not
here.
really, because our campus nearby here, all the apartments, houses, they're just located within, the perimeter of the college.
Yeah, hi,
Not,
Grace. Grace Wilson is joining us, or has been joining us.
uh-huh.
And she says nothing on Algol. It's a good point. When you were looking at the Gainesville murders, Mars was on Algol, and he beheaded at least one of the victims. So that was pretty bad. And it also shows the weapon to Mars, but nothing here on Algol, which
What
is
is that, a
interesting.
planet?
I'm sorry. Algol is a fixed star. When there's that in the mix, it'll show a strangling, somebody who gets cut in the throat. It also shows somebody who loses their head. It's also alcohol too, so it can show alcohol in certain cases. Lindsay Z says Todd's previous clue, Pullman, in reference to a town road and credit card fraud, aligns with Moscow police report in October in La Quinta Suites, Pullman location, for a man trying to use a stolen credit card. And you had said too that there you see a J like January or July, and that might actually have been just him getting out of jail in July. Or
I definitely feel there's one of these people has a it's on the sex offenders list.
yeah. Oh wow. That is that's something. So everybody's like, well, which one is it? What kind of perpetrator is he? Well, we've seen that it can be all of the above in past cases. So
I know, it is scary. I've been on a lot of cases. The smaller the towns, the more they point fingers, and so it is scary, and we don't take this lightly.
yes, and Ninja, as far as sheet, you're going to see in a lot of big tragedies. I believe the Titanic had sheet. It can mean murder. And it is a tough time right now. I mean, it's not just showing the personality of this crime, it's actually in play right now. And we've got some squares to it and tries to it. And I would say in the next 5 days, I'm just hoping to get out of this next week without something major happening. I know that doesn't sound very good, but I don't like sheet at all. And people who are born with sheet on their ascendant or in a major place, they often have drowning issues or just very difficult childhoods where there might be like a big crisis. In the fifth, one thing it can show is weighted at the bar. So 18 degrees could be an evil energy waiting at the friendship bar. Of course, it means park too, so you could say friendship park. Susie, what would the date of the murderers, 11, 13, 22, have any ritual significance? It's a good question. I don't know. I'm not a ritual expert.
I don't think there's significance with the date so much, but you're right. There are a lot of tragedies that happen on significant days. I'm one of those people, actually. I do believe that the tragedy of 9/11 happened on a very significant date, which they didn't talk about much. But people in the Middle East and people overseas are much more aware of astrological positions than people in the West.
That's for sure. Yeah, there was some plan there, I think. And then Gloria saying rage maybe could not stop. Well, the rage would be in Aries, and that Mars, he was just Mars in Gemini too. Okay, let's go over Mars in Gemini for a second. This is our perpetrator's profile. We can also look at Sun. That's another co-significator. But we've got Mars in Gemini, obviously maybe two males, maybe a young guy because Gemini is a younger person. Could be brothers, but Mars in Gemini, that's somebody who might kind of talk or think kind of in an angry, aggressive way. Might even be a loud talker.
I felt that too. I felt that too. Not quiet.
He might talk like really loud. Like when you see Mars squaring Jupiter, it's like, it's like, whoa, whoa, the kind of people, who yell into the phone and they don't need to yell, it just comes naturally.
It could have been why I felt there was some hiding going on at the house, because I don't think it was silent and other people would have heard.
Okay, so he had a
So
loud voice.
so yes, I mean, not everybody was in the bed asleep.
No.
Just don't think so.
Uh,
Could not stop, but uh, very controlled with their weapon.
mhm.
Controlled. Not out of control.
In the Gainesville chart, Venus is also in Scorpio, and he burglarized the apartment.
Mhm.
So that's something that's like something of someone else's. He also took food from their refrigerator, and a similar stellium was in the second house. So it's an odd thing, take something of somebody else's, go in, grab their stuff.
There's a lot of psychology and a lot of kind of psychosis when we're talking about some of these perpetrators. A lot of it I'm shocked at, some of it I've learned from the police, and it's there's they have to really be eating is really a part of being in touch with these people, it's a real psychological sickness. And oftentimes, like you were asking before, if they kept an object of theirs or something like that, oftentimes they will go back to the scene of the crime. They have to relive it. It's like their therapy.
Mhm.
I hate to say.
In the Chris Watts chart, we saw when we were looking at the chart and not knowing what happened, of course, we were looking at Neptune and what that could potentially have meant. Well, most people who follow that case, they know where the victims were found in oil, and Neptune is oil. So oil, gas, and that makes sense that he has been seen at a gas station.
I get a lot of mechanics. So whether it's as a career or whether it's just because, this person's working on stuff,
Yeah.
um,
I guess you wouldn't see his hands because you're good at that. Can we say which case we worked on in the past few months?
I'm getting a strong person, strong hands. Yeah, sure, you can talk about that.
You had a couple of clues. We've been working the Sean Doherty case. You described his hands really well. I imagine that it would be hard to describe this person's hands because he had gloves on, so you can't really say anything about it.
Um, yeah, it's questionable what kind of gloves. I'm feeling black leather gloves.
Yeah.
Nothing bulky. I almost for a minute there thought they were fingerless gloves, but what kind of idiot doing this would have a fingerless glove because he'd leave fingerprints?
No.
Um, and hold on. I am getting one thing on one of the perpetrators as a scar, a surgical scar on his abdomen for some kind of surgery, or possible, was it a wound? It could be an appendix, something like that. It doesn't look like a wound, it looks like a surgical scar on this person. Um, and Why is that important? Because sometimes we want to know if there was anybody unstable at a hospital. That they look into these things and they have more access to some of these records than we do. I mean, let's say this person was in prison, had to go for a surgery. That does happen. That would be on a record. So every little thing to me counts.
Well, Todd, maybe you can take that one. You've addressed that one before, but
Any idea where the entry was? Sliding door. I felt sliding door. Something was moved, was taken apart, like some of the screws I see. Almost like this person had to have a screwdriver, or screw gun, or something to, or hold on. I felt the police said the lock was tampered with or something. Yeah, I do go back into what they see too. There's a lot that they're looking around the door. And you know, it's weird is it almost felt like something was loosened a bit and then they came back to it. So I'm wondering if before, I don't know, before this took place, if something was partially done on the door and then they came back. That's weird.
whoa.
I don't know why, but
That would be somebody who knew about the parties maybe and
I'm
was
getting daytime.
oh my God.
That is kind of weird. I mean, I've installed sliding doors. Um, I used to be a contractor. I installed windows, doors, everything. And glass doors, the place where you're going to want to remove them is down on the bottom and the top. It's usually like a little rail that it moves on. And sometimes we've had to replace those or they get bent or something. Depends on the model of the door. This one feels like it has a thin seam that comes up. And there are screws down in there, but you'd have to also remove the ones on the inside too in order to remove the door. And that's a little